Aaron stands at the window, gazing out at the darkening skies above the coastal town. You can almost feel his heart pound as he watches those thunderclouds roll in, fierce and unrelenting. He knows what's coming. He's been tracking this storm for days. His military background has taught him to read the signs, to trust the uneasy hush in the air. Yet no training can fully prepare him for the moment a hurricane actually arrives. In the streets below, neighbors rush to load cars with everything from precious heirlooms to half-stuffed trash bags. Their panicked voices blend into a muffled roar, punctuated by the thud of hammers boarding up windows. Inside Aaron's home, however, the atmosphere feels strangely calm. He, his wife Samantha, and their two children, Ethan and Lily, have made the decision to stay, convinced they've done enough to withstand what's coming. Samantha helps Aaron secure the final plywood over a small kitchen window, her anxious gaze lingering on the swirling black clouds. She tries to mask her dread behind a supportive smile, but the tension between them is unmistakable. Each weather update has spoken of a once-in-a-century storm, a catastrophic force that could tear the town to pieces. They've taken every precaution they can think of: extra batteries, flashlights, water, and enough canned goods to last them well beyond the storm's likely duration. Their home, at least for now, stands as a fortress against nature's fury. Across the street, Mr. Browning struggles to nail boards onto his windows. Despite the wind tossing his hair and threatening to rip the hammer from his grip, his frustration seems aimed less at the storm and more at the fact that he can't manage everything by himself. For years, Mr. Browning has rarely spoken a kind word to anyone, especially Aaron's family. The two have coexisted in a sort of tense peace, passing each other on the sidewalk, exchanging curt nods but nothing more. Rumors of Browning's prejudices have circulated for ages, and the man's sneers and offhand remarks have always confirmed the stories. Now, the boards in his hands slip at every attempt, and he's clearly in over his head. You see Aaron hesitate. Despite all the animosity, he can't ignore a neighbor in trouble. He steps off his porch, crossing the street with purposeful strides. Samantha watches from their doorway, worry etched on her face. The winds have picked up so much it's hard to hear, but Aaron's voice still carries. Need a hand with that? Mr. Browning stares at him, eyes full of familiar resentment, his lips curling into a sneer. I don't need help from the likes of you, he spits out. The words hang in the air, heavy and venomous. Aaron, momentarily taken aback, looks at the precarious boards, the loose nails, the insufficient bracing. He knows another hour of strong wind could shatter that window. But Mr. Browning's stance is unyielding. Samantha sees Aaron's shoulders tense. She can guess what Mr. Browning said. Aaron lingers for a moment, struggling to master his anger. Finally, he nods curtly and heads back home. The old man huffs, turning back to his botched hurricane preparations. Samantha ushers Aaron inside, shutting the door against the growing gale. I know you wanted to help, she says quietly, handing him a bottle of water, but some people refuse to be saved. Aaron brushes off the sting of Browning's words. Yet, deep down, you sense his concern: a weaker house could endanger everyone if debris starts flying. That's just how storms work. No one's truly isolated when the wind can hurl a neighbor's roof tile through your own window. Aaron and Samantha check every supply twice. Their children, Ethan and Lily, look on with wide eyes and whispered questions. Is Mr. Browning going to be okay? Lily asks. There's a heartbreaking innocence in the question. Ethan, slightly older, has heard talk in school about Browning's reputation, but he simply shrugs. Aaron pats Lily's head and forces a reassuring smile. We can't worry about that right now, he says softly. We did our best. Let's stay focused on making sure we're safe. Even as he says it, you can see the flicker of guilt in his eyes. Night falls quickly as the storm sweeps in, the daylight swallowed by rolling clouds. Lightning forks across the sky, revealing glimpses of a neighborhood on edge, boarded-up windows, huddled silhouettes, cars crammed with belongings. Then the thunder booms, shaking everything in its path. The power flickers in Aaron's house, and Samantha stands ready with flashlights. Aaron's prior military experience has kicked into high gear. He checks the generator, tests the emergency radio, and calmly explains to the kids what to do if water starts coming inside. This sense of preparedness carries a kind of hope, even in the face of a monstrous storm, and the children cling to it as an anchor. But preparedness has its limits. When the hurricane finally makes landfall, it's like a massive fist pounding the walls. Rain slams into the house sideways, driven by gusts so fierce they make the windows groan. Samantha flicks on a battery-powered lantern, and they all gather in the living room, away from windows. The wind intensifies into a high-pitched shriek. Boards creak as though they might rip free at any second. Ethan and Lily press against their mother's side, both frightened but trusting their father's confidence. Then the lights go out, plunging the home into near-total darkness, save for the lantern's circle of light. Aaron rushes to the garage, yanking on the generator's pull cord. Until it sputters and roars. The hum of partial power relieves some tension. They have light again, if only for a while. But when he returns to the living room, Samantha points to a thin stream of water creeping under the front door. "We've got flooding," she says, her eyes wide. Outside, the yard must be pooling with rainwater, unable to drain fast enough. The water has found a path inside, despite all their barricades. Aaron calls for towels, but you can see the worry etched in his brow. Towels won't hold off a hurricane's might. More water seeps in from the back door. The tension escalates. Ethan stands on his tiptoes at the window, trying to see through the sheets of rain. Lightning reveals chaotic glimpses, trash cans tumbling down the street, a tree branch torn free from its trunk. Somewhere in the darkness, Mr. Browning's roof boards rattle under the punishing winds. Then comes a deafening crack. In a brilliant flash of lightning, a tall oak in Browning's yard splits and topples onto his roof, caving in part of the structure. Even from across the street, Aaron and Samantha witnessed the catastrophe. Samantha's heart pounds. "Aaron," she whispers, "did that tree just..." He nods grimly. The next lightning flash shows the old man's roof half collapsed, battered by rain, the interior left vulnerable to merciless wind gusts. For a few moments, the family stares, riveted by the horrifying sight. But suddenly, glass shatters nearby. The kitchen window in Aaron's home explodes inward, and a blast of wind and water surges in. Aaron shouts for everyone to retreat to the interior bathroom, their designated safe spot. Samantha shepherds the children, who cry out in shock at the force of the storm now invading their home. Aaron slams the bathroom door behind them. Rain-laden gusts buffet the walls, and water sloshes around their feet. The kids tremble as Samantha holds them close. Aaron flicks on his flashlight, shining it around the bathroom. This was meant to be their fortress if the storm raged too strongly, but it can't stop the water from creeping in. They huddle together. Outside, the hurricane roars like a freight train, tearing at roofs, snapping trees, flinging debris in all directions. Aaron steels himself, the old habit of "stay calm under pressure" shining through. But the brutal truth weighs on him, they might need to move to higher ground if this flooding worsens. The second floor might be their only chance at avoiding rising water. He and Samantha lock eyes. Without words, they agree on what needs to be done. He cracks the bathroom door open. The living room is ankle-deep in water, swirling with pieces of broken glass and furniture. "Follow close," he tells his wife and children. "Watch your step." With Ethan and Lily clinging to Samantha, Aaron leads them through the water, heading for the stairs. Each step is a battle against rising currents. The wind howls through the shattered kitchen window, and thunder booms so intensely it feels like the floor might split open. As they reach the staircase, they glimpse outside again. Browning's house looks like it's on the verge of total collapse. The oak trunk protrudes from the roof, creating a deadly gash that floods the interior. Samantha pulls Ethan and Lily up the stairs, urging them to hurry. Water is already pooling on the first few steps. Aaron glances out the broken window once more, guilt twisting his stomach. He cannot shake the image of Mr. Browning trapped under wreckage. But everything about this storm says it's suicide to go out. "Dad, come on!" Ethan yells. Another crash echoes through the house as part of the ceiling in the living room buckles. Aaron hurries up, heart hammering. In the safety of the second-floor hallway, they pause to catch their breath. Lightning reveals the street below. Live power lines have fallen into the floodwaters, sending arcs of electricity dancing across the surface. The sight is chilling, anyone who steps into that water could be electrocuted. Samantha murmurs, "No one can survive out there." Lily shivers against her. Aaron's mind spins with possibilities, none of them good. The storm's fury intensifies. He directs everyone to the master bedroom, which is more central and has fewer windows. At least if they must ride this out, they can do it away from fragile glass. The family gathers in that room, placing flashlights and lanterns on a dresser. Samantha rummages through their emergency bags, making sure the kids have dry blankets. Water drips from the ceiling in places, but it's not pouring in yet. Still, the house groans under punishing gusts, and the threat of a structural collapse looms. "We stay put until it's safe," Aaron says, voice calm but tense. "If we hear anything worse, we head to the attic. Understand?" The kids nod, swallowing their fear. You sense the unspoken question swirling in the air, "What about Mr. Browning?" A new disturbance interrupts their thoughts, frantic pounding at the front door. Even over the thunder, the banging is clear. At first, Aaron and Samantha exchange puzzled looks. Who on earth would be out in a storm like this? The knocks grow more desperate. Aaron dashes to the top of the stairs, shining his flashlight into the flooded corridor below. Samantha clutches the banister. "Aaron, be careful," she warns. Peering through a narrow opening between the boards on a window, Aaron spots the Carters, Thomas, Diana, and their young daughter, Chloe, neighbors from down the road. Their faces are streaked with rain and panic. You can almost feel their terror as they scream for help. Their own home must have given out, or maybe they were simply overrun by floodwaters. Aaron doesn't hesitate. He slogs through the water to open the door. The Carters tumble in, shivering and crying. Their child looks utterly frightened, clinging to her mother's neck. Samantha helps them up the stairs. They join Aaron's family in the master bedroom. Thomas and Diana explain how their house collapsed under the wind's onslaught, leaving them stranded on a floating couch in their living room until they managed to break a window and swim toward the only lit home they saw, Aaron's. It's a terrifying account. Lily and Ethan listen with tears brimming in their eyes. They realize just how lucky they are to still have four walls around them, even if those walls feel precarious. Space is tight now, but they all try to stay calm. Lantern light flickers over anxious faces. Samantha gives them dry clothes from her closet, and though they don't fit well, anything is better than drenched garments. The children huddle together, forging a quick bond in shared trauma. While the adults discuss what to do next, a weak, distant cry seeps through the wailing winds, "Help! Someone, help!" Aaron's eyes snap to the window. He can barely see through the sheets of rain, but he knows exactly where that voice is coming from, Mr. Browning's ravaged house. The old man, so full of pride and hatred, is now alone, pinned, or trapped amid wreckage. Samantha puts a hand on Aaron's shoulder, her expression pleading. She knows what he's thinking. "No," she says firmly, voice trembling. "Please. You heard the Carters. The water's electrified out there. You'd never make it back alive. Thomas, standing beside Aaron, nods in agreement. That guy's always treated you like dirt. He wouldn't risk his neck for us. But the sound of Browning's cries sliced through the room again, faint yet unmistakable, like a ghostly echo of desperation. Aaron's face hardens. He can't rest knowing someone is possibly dying within sight of his own window, even if that man despises him. I have to try, he says, steeling himself. Samantha closes her eyes, tears leaking down her cheeks. We need you here, she whispers, barely audible over the howling storm. Yet she understands. This is who Aaron is. Part of her fell in love with him because of this unwavering compassion, the drive to do the right thing no matter the risk. The children cling to her, protesting softly, but they also sense their father's resolve. Thomas tries to talk him out of it, but seeing the conviction in Aaron's eyes, he instead helps gather supplies, a length of rope, a piece of plywood, anything that might float or provide insulation from the electrified flood. Aaron navigates the flooded hallway, wincing as the swirling water climbs near his knees. He flicks off the generator to avoid any electrical hazards inside while he's gone, ensuring minimal risk of sparks if water reaches the circuits. Then he edges out the front door. The moment he steps outside, the wind slams into him like a giant, invisible wave. Rain blasts his face so hard it stings. At the curb, water and debris slosh around in a miniature river. Sparks of electricity spiderweb across the surface whenever a dangling power line touches the water. He inches forward, using the rope to tie himself to a support column on the porch. The plan is to rely on the rope to keep track of where he is and avoid being swept away. Step by step, he wades toward Browning's property, shining the flashlight as best he can. The yard between the homes feels like a minefield. Broken branches, loose boards, and who knows what else churn beneath the murky water. Every step could be his last if he misjudges the distance to a live wire. Lightning flares, revealing Mr. Browning's wrecked home. The fallen oak trunk juts through the roof, and the structure seems ready to crumble any second. Aaron shouts, "Mr. Browning! Where are you?" For a moment, only howling wind answers. Then a strained voice, "Here, inside." With all his strength, Aaron pulls himself onto a segment of porch that's still above the waterline. He can hear wood creaking in protest. With trembling hands, he tries to pry open the door, but it's jammed by debris. He ends up smashing through a window, feeling shards of glass cut his sleeve and graze his forearm. Adrenaline surges, pain is secondary to the need to act quickly. Inside the house is a twisted labyrinth. Rain pours through gashes in the roof. Furniture floats in waist-high water. The flashlight beam picks up swirling dust and shattered drywall. "Browning!" Aaron yells. He spots the old man partially pinned beneath a collapsed beam. Browning's face is contorted in fear and pain, water lapping at his shoulders. When he sees Aaron, disbelief floods his eyes. "Why'd you come?" he gasps. Aaron braces himself against the beam, pushing up with every ounce of strength he has. The water churns around them. It feels like trying to lift a car in the middle of a raging river. With a loud groan, the beam shifts just enough for Browning to scramble free. He's clearly injured, maybe a broken rib or a twisted ankle. Aaron pulls Browning's arm over his shoulders, half carrying, half dragging him through the swirling wreckage. A sudden lurch in the floor signals a partial collapse. They're forced to wade around floating chairs and drywall chunks, every second aware that live wires might be just inches away. Somehow, they make it back to the remains of the front porch. Rain lashes them so hard that Aaron can barely open his eyes. He spots the rope, still tied to the support column, and grips it. Browning clings to Aaron, coughing and wheezing, the man's earlier hostility dissolved by raw survival instinct. Step by step, they inch back into the yard. Arcs of electricity flicker in the flood, forcing them to detour around deeper sections. At one point, the current nearly sweeps Browning away, but Aaron yanks the rope, pulling him back from certain doom. Their journey across the yard feels like it lasts an eternity. The wind rips at their clothes, and thunder booms overhead like nature's war drum. Finally, the silhouette of Aaron's front steps comes into view. They heave themselves up onto the porch, hearts pounding like they might burst. Samantha and Thomas rush to help, hauling the two men into the relative safety of the house. Inside, water still pools on the floor, but at least the roof is intact and no wires dance with sparks. Everyone crowds around as Browning collapses onto a couch that's half submerged. His eyes flicker between terror and relief. Samantha fetches towels, ignoring her own trembling hands. Lily and Ethan stare wide-eyed at the man who once sneered at them. Diana cradles her daughter, Chloe, close, reminding her that everything's going to be okay. Thomas stands guard at the broken window, watching for any fresh danger. Browning finally catches his breath, glancing at Aaron with a mixture of awe and confusion. When he speaks, his voice is weak, but you can hear the regret, the shattered pride behind it. "I'm sorry," he manages to say. It's the apology no one ever imagined they'd hear from him. Aaron nods, too exhausted for a lengthy response. "We'll talk later," he replies, voice hoarse. "We need to make it through the night first." And so they do. The night is spent bailing water, moving everyone to the second floor when the flood in the living room climbs higher. Samantha dozes off clutching Lily and Ethan, while Thomas and Diana keep a watchful eye for structural cracks. Browning drifts in and out of consciousness, nursing his injuries in silence. Aaron paces the floor, mindful of every moan the house emits under the storm's wrath. Yet as dawn approaches, the wind finally begins to subside, and the rain's intensity lessens. When morning light breaks, it reveals a neighborhood transformed into a disaster zone. Overturned cars, splintered trees, and jagged holes in roofs as far as the eye can see. The front yard is a swamp of debris. Some houses, it seems, didn't survive at all. Water still runs in the gutters at dangerous speeds, but at least the threat of electrocution has diminished as certain power lines have shorted out completely. People begin venturing from their battered homes, calling out to check on neighbors. The street is filled with echoes of grief and sighs of relief. Some families made it, others are missing. Aaron and Samantha help Ethan and Lily navigate the rubble on their own front porch. Mr. Browning, leaning on a makeshift cane fashioned from broken wood, stands behind them. His usual scowl is gone, replaced by a subdued sorrow. He catches sight of other neighbors stepping over fallen branches. Shouts of, "Are you okay?" fill the air, forging a spirit of unity in tragedy. Even the carters join in, offering to clear someone's driveway or salvage what they can. Browning glances at the people whose help he never wanted, his gaze reflecting both shame and gratitude. Without discussing it, the entire block bands together. They set up a shared table in the middle of the cul-de-sac, distributing water bottles and snacks pulled from half-flooded pantries. Those with functioning grills cook whatever's left in their freezers before it spoils. Conversations spark among folks who'd barely greeted each other a week ago. Browning and Aaron find themselves shoulder to shoulder, hauling away debris from the ruined end of the street. The old man winces with every step, wincing at the injuries that likely need a doctor's attention. Still, he refuses to sit idle. Later that day, the storm clouds scatter, revealing a blazing sun that glares down on the wreckage. Trucks from distant emergency services haven't arrived yet, so the neighbors rely on one another. Samantha sets up a first aid station near the Carter's partially intact garage, cleaning cuts and bandaging scrapes. Ethan and Lily, along with Chloe, pass out bottles of water to adults dripping with sweat and exhaustion. Browning lingers at the edges, uncertain if he's truly welcome. But no one pushes him away. Eventually, he works up the courage to address the group gathered around the makeshift table. "I've got 2 spare rooms," Browning announces, voice subdued. "If anybody needs a place." A stunned hush follows. This man, who once hated the idea of mixing with neighbors he deemed inferior, is offering shelter. An unspoken understanding ripples through the crowd. Transformations can happen even in the most stubborn hearts. In the weeks that follow, the block rebuilds. Some homes remain unlivable, so neighbors bunk with those who have intact second floors. Crews arrive, clearing roads and restoring electricity. People share everything: tools, storage space, leftover food. At first, Browning's presence makes a few folks uneasy. But day by day, he shows up to clear debris, hammer nails, or carry heavy loads for anyone who can't manage on their own. He never speaks of his past hostility. He doesn't try to justify or explain it. Actions do the talking now. You see a moment that sums it all up: Browning leaning against a fence post, wiping sweat from his brow, while Aaron finishes sawing a fallen branch. The old man looks at Aaron, then at the children running around in the yard. His eyes mist over. He doesn't say a word, but there's an unspoken apology in the way he hands Aaron a fresh bottle of water, an unspoken thanks in the nod he offers Samantha when she waves. All of it says, "I see now how wrong I was. And I'm trying, one day at a time, to make it right." Months later, the street still bears scars. Some homes had to be rebuilt from scratch. Others sport mismatched roofs patched with new wood. However, the community that emerged stands stronger than ever. People greet each other by name. They help watch each other's kids. They share produce from their gardens or arrange block parties to raise money for ongoing repairs. Browning's transformation is a small miracle of empathy conquering hatred. He never quite becomes the friendliest neighbor on the block. He's still reserved, set in his ways. But the sneer is gone, replaced by a humility forged under lethal winds and pounding rain. One evening, the entire neighborhood gathers for a simple cookout among the half-reconstructed houses. A banner reading, "Together we stand," drapes awkwardly between 2 splintered trees. Someone passes around lemonade, others grill hot dogs and hamburgers on battered old grills. Browning sits in a folding chair, cane resting at his side. He beckons Aaron over with a nod, then motions for the rest of the families to join. With heartfelt, halting words, he thanks everyone for not abandoning him to the storm he'd been so certain he could face alone. He admits that his pride, his prejudice, had walled him off for decades. It took a hurricane to tear down both his physical walls and the bigger wall around his heart. People offer gentle applause, subdued but genuine. The kids run around playing tag among piles of lumber. Samantha dabs her eyes, touched by the sincerity in Browning's voice. Aaron lays a hand on the old man's shoulder, a brief but meaningful connection. They watch the children giggle and scramble to avoid being, safe and carefree, no longer haunted by the memory of that night's terror. The streetlights flicker on, marking a return to normalcy that once seemed impossible. You might think this is the story's end, a neighborhood battered by a storm, then coming together to rebuild. But for everyone who experienced that hurricane, the lessons linger. They learned that bigotry has no place in a community bound by shared fate. They saw how easily a life can be swept away, how quickly differences dissolve when survival is on the line. Browning's rescue wasn't just a physical one, it saved him from the loneliness he'd embraced for so many years. And it offered the neighborhood a powerful reminder that compassion can bridge even the widest chasms. Aaron and Samantha eventually replace all the waterlogged drywall. Their children return to school, sharing stories of how a single storm turned enemies into allies. Other families renovate or move away, but the sense of unity remains. Even those who left stay in touch, forging friendships rooted in that harrowing night. If you walk down that street today, you see new roofs, fresh paint, and carefully planted gardens. But if you talk to the neighbors, they'll tell you the real change happened in hearts, impossible to see at a glance, yet profound in its impact. Whenever storm clouds gather on the horizon, the block takes no chances. They coordinate emergency plans together, sharing resources in ways unthinkable before. No one stands alone. If Mr. Browning is out front, you might spot him accepting a helping hand without bristling or hurling insults. On rare occasions, you'll even catch him volunteering to help someone else first, a subtle but unmistakable sign of who he has become. Time passes. Hurricanes come and go, with each season stirring a ripple of anxiety in this battered coastal region. Yet, the greatest storm for these neighbors has already passed, leaving a more enduring calm behind. It's a calm born of mutual respect, built on the memory of how quickly everything can be lost. And ironically, it's the man who once symbolized division who now embodies the lesson best. Browning doesn't talk much about that night, about how water rose around his neck, or how he felt certain he'd die under that fallen beam, the stinging regret that his final words might have been hateful slurs. But sometimes, he'll stand on his porch at sunset and gaze at the place where Aaron first offered help. You can almost see gratitude in his eyes. If you ask Aaron about that night, he'll say he didn't see himself as a hero, he simply did what needed to be done. I was raised to help whoever's in trouble, he might say with a shrug, though Samantha will smile, knowing it goes deeper than that. Aaron won't dwell on the details of how close they came to being electrocuted or swept away in the currents. Instead, he focuses on the miracle that they both survived. And if you stand there a while, you'll notice Ethan and Lily, grown a bit taller now, listening. Their father's story has shaped them, teaching them that sometimes the hardest person to help is the one who deserves it the least. Yet that's precisely where true compassion shines. This entire journey, from boarded-up windows and hammered nails to a community grill out in the aftermath of destruction, echoes a universal truth: disasters can either destroy or unite. Here, unity won. Prejudice and hatred did not vanish overnight, but they lost their stronghold when the neighborhood realized that no storm distinguishes between color, creed, or background. The only path forward was standing shoulder to shoulder, offering a hand to people they once avoided, embracing neighbors they barely knew. So, as the block's residents continue rebuilding their lives, they carry with them a collective memory of that fateful night, the wind roaring like an angry sea, the rain beating down, the flashlights bobbing in floodwater, and a man risking everything to save someone who had refused him. When storms approach, they no longer think of just their own families. They knock on each other's doors, share plywood and nails, swap advice on safe rooms or evac routes. This readiness stems not just from fear of nature's fury, but from an unspoken promise: we will never abandon each other again. In the end, the real power of this story doesn't lie in the images of wind-ravaged houses or lightning-slashed skies. It resides in the humble moments of neighbors helping neighbors. It resonates in the tearful gratitude of an old man rescued from his own collapsing world, literally and metaphorically. It thrives in the quiet nights when Aaron glances out his window, remembering the risk he took and the life he saved, grateful that his children witnessed kindness triumph over bitterness. The hurricane destroyed countless possessions, ravaged entire streets, and left scars that still mark the landscape. But it also acted like a test, an unthinkable trial that stripped away illusions and forced everyone to reveal who they truly were. Some displayed bravery they never knew they possessed. Others, like Browning, discovered that hatred could be washed away by a single act of mercy. The cost was steep, yet the gains proved immeasurable: a neighborhood reborn, anchored by bonds forged in the darkest of nights. If you ever visit that street, you'd see a neighborhood like many others: kids riding bikes, people mowing lawns, a dog barking at the mail carrier. But linger and listen, and you'll sense the deeper story pulsing through everyday life: how adversity unmasked humanity's best side. You might catch a moment when Browning waves at Aaron, a gesture so small yet so monumental, considering everything that once stood between them. You might see children from different families playing in the yard, oblivious to the lines that once divided them. And you might hear the echo of a storm that taught them all the same lesson: we're stronger together. Yes, the memories still hurt. People lost precious mementos, entire homes, even loved ones in the broader region. The magnitude of destruction can't be downplayed. But the profound sense of shared resilience endures. Emotional wounds began to heal as hammered nails and fresh paint transformed ruins into living spaces once again. Each fresh coat of paint is a promise, each nailed board a reminder: we rebuild not just for ourselves, but for the community we've become. In quiet reflection, Aaron sometimes replays that moment he decided to leave the safety of his home to save Mr. Browning. He wonders if he hesitated too long or if he acted too soon. But ultimately, he's glad he followed his conscience. Samantha stands by him, certain that compassion isn't just a choice, it's who Aaron has always been. The kids, once shaken by the storm, now speak of it as a defining experience that taught them empathy and bravery at a young age. It's a chapter in their lives that shaped them more than any classroom lesson ever could. Mr. Browning, for his part, remains a quiet figure on that street. But every so often, he'll invite neighbors over for coffee, especially if he knows they've had a hard week. It's his way of giving back. The old man who used to mutter cruel words under his breath has learned to say, "Thank you," and "I'm sorry." And though those words don't erase what came before, they open a door to a future none of them believed possible. That future glows in every dawn that lights up the repaired homes, in every friendly wave exchanged between once wary neighbors, in every block party invitation taped to a front door. It's a future where prejudice has no place, drowned out by a single night of survival that redrew the lines of community forever. Because if a hurricane's raging winds can bring down houses, it can also wash away invisible barriers between people, leaving them no choice but to stand together or crumble alone. So if you find yourself doubting whether a single act of kindness can change a lifetime of hatred, remember Aaron's journey through that flooded yard. Remember the thunder, the lightning, and the live wires crackling with deadly sparks. Remember the old man who looked into the eyes of the person he once scorned and saw, for the first time, the depth of his own blindness. And remember how they both walked away from that storm alive, forging a quiet, profound transformation that rippled through the entire neighborhood. This is more than just a story of destruction and rescue. It's about rebirth, about how tragedy can unearth the best in us. It's about the possibility of redemption, even for hearts long hardened by fear and ignorance. Most of all, it's about the power we each hold to reach out a hand, to risk our comfort, and to save not only another's life, but also our own sense of what's right in this world. May we all carry that lesson forward, standing ready to help each other when life's storms, literal or metaphorical, come crashing down.